Welcome to episode 2 of The Mindful Haven. Today we are joined with the lovely Dr. Nadia McFarlane, who is going to talk to us a little bit about a psychiatric perspective. And I'm very excited to talk to you and get into it and learn a little bit more about you as well as the practice. So before we dive into psychiatry and holistic healing, let's start with you. What was young Nadia like? Where were you born and raised?
Yes. I was born in Queens, New York. At the age of 10, I know what's up, New York. At the age of 10, we moved over to Long Island. And I stayed there until leaving for college. Growing up, let's see, my parents were from Jamaica. They came over pretty young. My sister and I were born here. I do have an older sister, 4 years older. So it was the four of us navigating life. This world was new to my parents. So they had to, in a way, assimilate, but also keep the culture, Jamaican culture going, which they did. Let's see, I'm very close to my parents, very close-knit family because it was us. Even though the family was in Jamaica, some were in Canada, some were in Florida. And I have one uncle in the Bronx, but it was just us. My mom was one of 10. My dad was one of 7. So, it's like, oh, it's just them and their 2 kids. They're used to big. Now we came small. Grew up very humble means. Strict family, as most West Indians are. But good food. I would say in a way, when I'm trying to characterize what my personality was like, I think I was the same. I was pretty quiet. Like I had a subset of friends who I tracked with still, went to high school, went to elementary school, high school, college with. So we made it through that. But I was always very reserved, always the one that just looked and would make comments here and there. I was never the talker. I was never the life of the party. I had parties. I had fun at parties. But that's always been my personality. Just to sit back, very chill.
Reserved.
Very
an
reserved.
Observer. And I know you mentioned your parents. Were either of them doctors?
No, my parents, when they came over, they were young. My mom worked for Allstate, and did that to retirement. And my dad was a sanitation worker and did that to retirement. So my sister and I are the first, well, we're the only 2, but we're both physicians. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's impressive. Both of you being physicians. I know. Is she a psychiatrist as well?
No, she's a pediatric emergency room doc. Yeah. She has a different type of field, but it's funny. Our fields interconnect all the time because I'll see kids at the hospital and they'll say, "Hey, I think I saw your sister in the emergency room." I'm like, yeah, it's probably her.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
speaking about psychiatry, I know psychiatry often gets misunderstood, even within the broader field of medicine. So what drew you specifically to psychiatry?
I think it's just that, the misunderstanding of psychiatry and me wanting to make people understand. It has a bad rap, right? I like to call psychiatry the underdog. Everybody always says, "Oh, it's all in your head. It's like all bets against psychiatry." No, no, no. It's interesting. When I went to medical school, I went with the idea, you couldn't tell me that I wasn't going to be Dr. McFarlane, OBGYN. You could not tell me that I wasn't going to deliver babies, that I wasn't going to do well woman visits. Did it. I enjoyed it. Then psychiatry came after, and I was, as they say in New York, I was shook. It was an experience. Walked into the emergency room, one side with kids, one side with adults. I looked at the kids. I was like, wow, if these kids don't get proper treatment. And then I looked at the adults. I was like, I think I'm going to go this route. Everybody was shocked. Shocked me too.
Wow, that is quite like a transition. Wow, so that's interesting. And then, so what was that like going from wanting to be an OBGYN or actually being an OBGYN to doing psychiatry?
So what I took from it, to be honest with you, from the OBGYN part is because I really like kids. So I said, okay, I just won't be a psychiatrist. I'll be a pediatric psychiatrist. So I'll still work with the young. I can still, be around not babies, even though there is a field of infant psychiatry, but I can still be around kids, which is what I really, really like to do. The transition, what's interesting? The transition wasn't that hard because when I was doing my adult studies, we had a lot of pregnant women. And I said, well, had I been an OBGYN, I would be, referring them out to a psychiatrist. So I still got a taste of it. We had a lot of postpartum psychosis in the emergency room. So although different, they do intertwine.
Yeah, it sounds like there is
Mhm.
like a lot of overlap. That's so
Mhm.
interesting.
Mhm.
And as the chief medical officer at Imperium, you
Mhm.
wear both the white coat and also a leadership hat. So what does like a typical day look like for you, and what parts of the role mean the most to you?
You ready for this typical day? Okay.
I think it's going to be a lot. I'm very interested.
Okay, so my mornings always start out with a workout. Cannot, especially Monday through Friday. All right. And sometimes I'll work out on the weekend. You do need to give your body a rest. I understand that. But I cannot get motivated and function without getting some type of endorphins released. Right. So depending on the day, I will either get up at 3:15 in the morning or 4:15 in the morning. I know because I like to weight lift and then I like to do a class at one of the what is it, Orange Theory. But I like to also get to the hospital early for rounds. I like to see the kids. I have to talk to their families, and then I have to be ready for treatment team where we present the kids and what's happening, and that's at 9 o'clock. So I try to get to the hospital by like 6:30. Wake the kids. I know they're looking at me like this lady is ridiculous, and be ready. So I'm there. Some days I will go into the inpatient. It's an inpatient adolescent unit. And some days I will go with one of my providers to the outpatient program just for like an hour, hour and a half. It's a nice way to track the kids once they have left the hospital to see how they do. If I'm not going there, most days I go to Imperium and get ready for the afternoon, where it is either starting at 11, most likely 11, going until 4, just seeing kids, families, adults back to back to back. After that, time to pack up, take that hat off, and act like mom. I have 2 kids, an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, who are very busy. And I think as I said, growing up very humbly with my parents, we didn't have a lot of evening activities like the kids do now. We went outside and played and we did our homework, but we weren't driving to Taekwondo. This one has piano. This one has gymnastics. So we have to do all that and we have to do our homework and then we have to sit down and eat. So my day doesn't end typically until about 8. And
It's a
then
very, very jam-packed, busy day.
no room
It's a
for
lot of
error.
different hats you wear.
Yes. I'll be honest with you, the best parts of it though, um, when I get to Imperium, it's a different feel because it's crisis and chaos at the hospital, right? You have really, really sick. Then you transition to the clinic where people are generally stable. They come in with your families. You get to see the progress. Um, one of the best times for me is when the whole team gets to sit down in the break room and just laugh. And we do that every day. We just set an hour where, we'll eat lunch and we just decompress. We'll talk about patients, we'll talk about our families, but it's just a time to just breathe. And then we get up and we go back to work.
Definitely, I know that hour can probably be the highlight of the day sometimes, to have that moment to decompress and just take it
Mm-hmm.
in and enjoy the company around you, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. In terms of the role, whether it be either one of these roles, is there a specific part that like means the most to you, or something that really impacts you, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
drives you?
Mm-hmm. When I see the progress. So a lot of the kids that I have in the hospital, if they are able to, they'll come to the clinic. So when I see them from the sickest they've been, and they go to the outpatient program, then they come to me and they're starting to fit back into their family style, into their structure. They're going to school. I have one that is graduating this year that, I mean, every time I see him, I just get goosebumps. It's just That's the best part because it reminds me, although you have no time for yourself, you do it for this reason. And it's nice to see the families come back because when you're talking to them in the beginning, the families are shattered. Parents don't know what to do. And then here we go. We come to the clinic and everybody's melding and we're getting back. That structure is there. There's no longer an identified patient or, it's family. You just breathe and you say, okay, you did what you were supposed to do.
Absolutely. That sounds like it's so rewarding to be able to have such an impact and make such a difference in someone's life. And it will be
It.
such like a long-term
Mm-hmm.
thing, and like, they'll
Mm-hmm.
always remember you and that experience. So that must be super rewarding and like gratifying.
It is. It is. It makes it all worth it.
Absolutely. And I know going back to like holistic mental health, that's a term that I know people hear so often. I hear it so often, but from a psychiatrist point of view, what does holistic mental health really mean in practice?
Mm-hmm. So when in our practice, holistic, we are dealing with the entire, and it's not just the entire person, it's the entire life of the person, every aspect. So you can come into the office and yes, we can talk about, we have depression and we're going to treat it this way, but we're also going to talk about socially what we're going to do to uplift ourselves. We're going to bring in the family. How can the family support us? We go to every aspect. Of course, we're going to bring in exercise and nutrition because that's important, but it's the entire person, not just the disease.
Absolutely. And can you give an example of what that looks like? Like what that, I guess, I don't know the right way to say, like plan or anything
Mm-hmm.
like that. Like what does the entire
Hmm. Hmm.
process
So
look
when
like?
I have an adolescent that comes in that is struggling with, let's just use depression or anxiety, right? Typical for high schooler, especially around here. Education demands are huge. Parents are busy working as well. What do we need to do? Okay. So we know that the disease itself, the depression and anxiety, more than likely there's a genetic component to it, right? So we have to bring in the family, try to understand or help the family understand that even though, for example, let's just use a name, Nadia, let's just use me because I don't want to pick a name and somebody think Nadia, Nadia is depressed, but likely Nadia got it from one of you two, mom or dad. So let's go there and let's see what we have going on. Let's see what your understanding is of it. Let's bring you in, right? Okay, we're depressed, we're not motivated, we're doing poorly. All right, so we need to make sure we get academically, we have to save this child so that they can graduate and continue on. All right, so we get the school involved. What does that involve? A 504, an IEP, what special supports, any type of accommodations that we could do. Right, okay, so once we get stable and we're starting to get a little motivated, let's now talk about how we're going to integrate back into life. Let's talk about things you like to do. I used to do Taekwondo. I used to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, let's set a schedule. Let's make that a priority for a treatment instead of just the typical, here's a prescription. Here you go. Take the medication. Hope your mood gets better. So we went through every facet of that adolescent's typical day to try to make it as whole as possible.
Amazing. And then touching on medication, I
Mm-hmm.
know it's often assumed that psychiatry is all about medication, but I know Imperium integrates TMS, neurofeedback, lifestyle changes, even family dynamics, like you mentioned. Why is that multidimensional approach so important?
Mhm. Because psychiatry is not cookie cutter. Okay. How it affects you is not going to how it's going to affect me. Right. So the best thing we can do in the field is to have options. And I didn't want to be the clinic where it was just a prescription pad, 20 minutes, see you later. Right. After a while, yes, I'm a psychopharmacologist. I understand the medications, but I realize that it's a lot more than that. And some people don't want medication, and some people have been on medications for such a long time and they're just tired. So why not use go back to the research and see what's new, the novelty, let's try different avenues. And it's so hard to get. That's why I wanted to do everything one stop because I don't like when you're getting this over here, you're getting your therapist over here. Oh, I have a treatment. There's no continuum. So let's make it under one building. And that was the main reason why we said, let's get it. And we're always looking for what's new, what's coming up, which has the most evidence, and how can we implement it?
And what, I don't know if there is something like a defying thing or person or moment that makes you either prescribe or not prescribe something. Is there something that's specific into you do want to prescribe for someone or you don't want to prescribe medication for someone?
So first and foremost, I can only recommend, right? So I always want to hear whoever I'm working with, their point of view, because some of them have reasons why. It's just not, they're just anti-meds. There's actual reasons why. So we'll delve into that. What will make me say to them, we should pursue the possibility of medications is if they're not functioning. Okay. If they're not going to work, if they are going to work, but they're not, they're in the bathroom crying, or even in school, they're in school, but their grades are down to nothing. They're going into the bathroom. They're sitting in the bathroom on their lunch break. At home, they're in the room the whole time. They're just withdrawing. If the function is not there, that's when I'll say, okay, we are at the point where.
Medicine should be involved.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you have so many stories that probably come to mind when you think about patients, but is there a specific patient story that has really stuck with you and one that's really reminded you why you do this work? I know you mentioned one earlier, but do you have like a patient story that you would
Mhm.
share?
Actually, I have one that I saw recently. He came into the hospital at the age of 13 or 14, was getting bullied at school. Um, very, because of the bullying, was a little on the aggressive side, was getting in trouble at school a lot. Um, Complaints of hearing voices. So, the question of psychosis was there. And I was like, 13 is sort of young, but we'll see. But just overall, just not functioning, was having the suicidal thoughts. He came into the hospital. After the hospitalization, we didn't even start meds at that time. I remember talking to the family about the importance of the therapy piece of it, right? He's a history of bullying. He goes to a huge school. So here we go in the hospital. Groups are of 10 to 12, a little bit, more intimate, I guess is the best way to say it. Get him talking. He was a little anti because he did feel like that identified patient. It's you, 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 you. So got him talking. He went through the hospitalization. Not 100% when he left, but more future oriented, which is what we were looking for, right? Because it's not just it's a long process. Then came into the outpatient program for 6 weeks. We did at that point, because now that he wasn't in the hospital and back home, but coming to treatment, we did notice that, it was depression, and it was bad. And he needed that motivation to get out of bed and come to treatment. In the hospital, it's easier. The group room is right across from your bedroom, right? So we started him on Prozac, starting dose, tracked him, finished the program, went to school. Here we go with the holistic. Got the school involved. So I was talking to the counselors at school every semester. What would this child need? We did the 504, we did the IEP, and we would do it every year. Just track him the whole time. Saw him. He graduated high school. He's actually working now and in college. I saw him last week. And it was the first time he just like said to me, I have to hug you, because I just didn't know I could feel like this. He said, when I was 13, he said 13. When I was 13, I didn't think I was going to see 18. And, it was a long process, but, you have been there. And I have to say, I was in it. It was stressful, because especially when you're getting the school involved and they want, you have to write exactly how things can be. And then you're thinking, oh my God, is this going to be correct for him? It was very stressful, but we made it. And he is flourishing. He's in college. He has a job. He is in a relationship. He feels good. Our sessions now are just sitting back and just saying, hey, how's work going? It's, what is that? 4 years to get to this point. Yeah. Yeah. Um, so that is my story, and I will hold on to it, because every time I
Absolutely.
see him.
Honestly, that
Mhm.
gave me goosebumps that
Mhm.
he was even able, to say those things. That's incredible.
Mhm.
What was like the root of his depression and where did that kind of stem
Mhm.
from?
very strong family history, excuse me, uh, masked by substance abuse. Okay. So yeah, so and so drinks a lot and drinks a lot. And okay. It wasn't until that parent decided to get help and realize that I drink a lot because I just can't function without it. I'm really down. She saw herself and her son, and she put herself in treatment too. hmm So it's inherent, right? It's in him, and then on top of it, you have the gene picture, the genetics. On top of it, you have kids making fun of him at school, sexuality issues, just being mean, just kids being kids. 13, terrible age.
Rough age. Kids are
Rough
very
age.
mean at 13.
And so he retaliated with aggression. He's not psychotic. He talked about hearing voices. It was more linked to his mood and feeling low. So once we got that treated, that went away. So yeah, it's a big genetic component, and it takes a long time to get parents to understand. You have to look at you first. The family that doesn't speak, I really need you to delve in and find, because the answer is there most of the time, because we don't talk about it.
Right.
hmm
I mean, that's actually incredible that the parent was able to take steps forward to help themselves as well and not
hmm
resist, like not be resistant towards it. Really like
hmm
take that in. That's incredible. And
hmm
so you said you've been working with this patient for 4 years. Is that typically, do you usually see patients for that long, or is this a specific case that is for that long?
No, it's all of mine have typically, when I moved here in 2017. Clinic started in about 2019, right around the COVID era. Um, so no, I've been working with even longer. I'm not the one they turn. So even though I am an adolescent psychiatrist, they turn to adults, and I just tell them, you're grandfathered in. You're not going anywhere. We're just sticking with it. So yeah, we don't need to start over with anybody new. So I'll be seeing them all when they're married and have their own kids, if they allow.
So you have to really have like very, very strong connection. That's like such a long time. So do you start seeing patients before 18, but you'll see them after, or do you take on new clients that are not adolescent as well?
So typically I start at 5 years old, especially in the clinic. The hospital is adolescent. So any hospital patient that comes in, they're 13, is the youngest. But in the clinic, we will do 5 years old and go on. I try to, because I know the demand and the need, I try to limit the amount of 20 something, 30 something year olds, just because, trust and believe, there's 5 other kids that need to come in. So my support, my other providers, they will do a lot of the adult. But I do have adults though that I've inherited from other docs or other providers. And of course, I always say yes. I have a problem saying no. We'll work together. But a bulk of my work is, the very young, and I track them through.
That's like very, very interesting that you can be working with someone from 5 years old, like through the rest of their life. I could imagine getting like very, like just like connected with them. Like that's such a long time to continue working with someone. I didn't realize that it worked in that way. I always thought it was more of like a short term kind of like relationship. So that's super interesting. And you have worked with teens and adults and families. So what patterns do you see in how people first reach out for help? And are there certain things that you think usually hold them back?
Well, yeah, biggest thing is they don't reach out for help, and it gets to the point where they feel as though they have no more options, and then they do something dangerous, right? So that's where a lot of it is, and they don't reach out because of the stigma. They're afraid of what their parents will say or people in their community, or what's next. I don't want to be in a psych ward, or so that's typically a lot of times the pattern I see is that they wait too long. We could have beat this a lot earlier, if the fear wasn't there. But I get it. Mental health, a lot of people don't grasp it as I do. Um, so it's a fine line, can be dangerous. right? Because if you're coming in late and it's like, I was, a patient on the verge of harming themselves or even harming others, and it's, how do we catch up from here? That's the most difficult piece is when they present late.
And in terms of reaching out,
Hmm.
being that you do work with teens, is it usually them that come to you requiring help, or is it usually a parent? I'd imagine it being a mix, but do you see one more than the other?
I would say a lot of the time things happen at school and the counselors at school will tell the parents, I think they need an evaluation because they've noticed a decline or they've noticed this type of behavior, X, Y, and Z. And then when you get to the kid, they're just like, they're just ready. Like, but they couldn't go to their parents because, no, we're parents. We can fix it. Don't worry about it. We will work this through. Just talk to me, X, Y, and Z. I get it, but yeah, it's mainly through the school.
I can imagine that as like from a parent's perspective as well, thinking that you'd be able to, this is my kid, like I can solve this. So
Hmm.
do you see that with parents a lot, like denial in terms of like what's really going on? Is that something that happens pretty frequently or no?
Absolutely. Every day. It's always, oh, they're sad because of this, because they don't have their phone or their friend group. And I get it, but it's a lot deeper than that. Yes, they're reacting to that, but I can bet you it's a lot more than just that superficial stuff. It's hard. It has gotten a lot easier to provide the education to parents, but they're looking at me sometimes like, you don't know my kid. I know my kid. I'm the parent. This is what it is. So it can be frustrating, but it takes a lot of time, a lot of work when you're dealing with the kids. A lot more work is done with the family. Yep. If the family is sick and the family's not treated, you have no chance with that kid. So we put a lot of work with the family.
Do you have something that comes to mind, how you just told us like a positive patient story? Is there anything that comes to mind from a parent standpoint that was like a very difficult situation, or a parent that was resistant to like seeking help and being on board?
I have resistant parents every day. And it's typical. No, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's typically in the hospital. So at Imperium, the parents there because they're involved, right? They are not only are they in the lobby, but we make sure they come into the session so that they're involved because we need to see dynamics and we need to work with the family. But at the hospital, I met maybe 70% of the time with a lot of resistance. Parents wanting, trying to dictate the treatment. Like, no, my kid, it's fine. We're just going to do therapy. We don't need a psychiatrist. I'm leaving against medical advice every day. And it's so saddening. Like, you try to explain to them the gravity of the situation. Your child just overdosed on 30 Tylenol. Like, I don't even care if you don't want to think that it was a suicide attempt. Let's talk about why would your child opt there, right? Let's even, the parents that say, oh, it was for attention. Great. I'll even give you that. But let's figure out why do they need this attention?
Right.
They don't want to hear it. They're out. So I have my positives that I go to, but I have a lot of negative.
Absolutely. But at least like with Imperium, it definitely sounds like that's not something that you face too often since everyone is on board.
Hmm. Hmm. From the first visit, families are involved. Right? So we do our initials, which give an entire hour, and we split it like 30-30, where it's just the parents and then it's just the kid. And we typically go over and then we talk about how we're going to bring it together. Just so that the parents realize that one, we're just not your, prescription mill. We actually want to hear what you have to say and want you involved and want you to understand because I'm only talking to your kid once a month, right? You're there every day. So you have to be my voice and understand and see, what to look like, what it looks like and how to respond X, Y, and Z. So I think just that they feel the comfort. They're not afraid.
Mhm. That's good. You're giving them those tools to go home and help manage with the child
Absolutely.
at home. It's
Hmm.
yeah, I see the
Hmm.
whole dynamic
Hmm.
is, I would say, like probably a huge difference having that support.
Yep.
And when it does come to mental health, and there's so much stigma around mental health, but since the stigma is still really real, in your opinion, what's one myth or misunderstanding about psychiatry that we really need to retire?
Yeah. We really need to retire that psychiatry is not science. It is, I want to like make a t-shirt. Psych is science. It is a total rotation in medical school. You have residency programs around it. It is scientific. It is no different than your, your primary care, your OBGYN. It's science. Science is backing it. What kills me is when I hear quotes, it's all in your head. It's all in your head. It doesn't exist. It's real. It's real. And, seeing what's been happening in our world over a couple of years now, we need to rest all of that and understand this is real, and it's coming to the forefront. It's coming to the forefront even faster than what people would have predicted. It can be very dangerous, as we have seen. And I think people need to take it seriously.
Absolutely. Mental health is just as important, if not more important than physical health. And I know that
Yep.
there are so many
Yep.
stigmas around it. Like you said, it is just in your head, or oh, you're, just making assumptions or things that people just say and like internalize. And I feel like that will probably put so many people off from seeking help that they need. There's
Absolutely.
so many myths. Like,
Yep. When we have our conversations, I always make it a point to remind people that it's no different than having diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. You go to the doctor for the treatment, and you go to a psychiatrist who is a medical doctor for the treatment. Sometimes when you go to your PCP, they'll say diet and exercise is good. Your blood pressure is fine. If your blood pressure gets really bad, then we'll start a blood pressure medication. Same thing at Impireum. Hey, therapy, let's, get good sleep hygiene. Let's make sure we exercise. Let's get all of our supplements. Let's start there. If not, then we can talk about a medication. It's no different.
absolutely. And I'm sure that there are people listening now that may be struggling. So let's say that there is a listener hearing this episode and they are struggling silently and they're not sure whether to get help, unsure who to trust. What would you tell them right now?
First and foremost, you're not alone. And once you seek help, if it's through the suicide crisis line, or, if you actually talk to a counselor at school or anybody about it, you'll see that it's all around you. It's an eye opener to see how many people are struggling. So you are not alone. And I always tell my kids that status posts, as we say, suicide attempts, you're supposed to be in this world just like anybody else, right? You've had a rough trajectory, but there is a positive at the end of it. It just takes time and it takes work. You need a lot of, you have to have the support. And there are people that went to school and are in debt right now because of all the school they did that want to help you. And you have to just put the guard down, take away this myth that, it's not real, and say, I need to do this for myself. I want to be a functioning adult. So I'm going to talk to somebody about it.
Absolutely. Do you see a lot of suicidal patients? Is that a big population of the people you help?
Oh, yes. Yes. It's about 90% of the hospitalizations.
And from all age ranges, right?
Yes, yes.
Wow.
On the adult units, they do have a little bit less because they have like chronic depression. They'll have chronic psychosis. They'll have schizophrenia. But the adolescent unit, a lot of it is self-harming, suicide attempt, ingesting pills, safety, 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 safety. So it makes it's a very fine line, and it can be dangerous. Not every story ends in a happy ending, I guess is the best way to
Absolutely.
put it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So with what we do at the hospital, we explain to them this is, it's a short-term stay. It's just a stabilization piece, right? We try to get them to understand that we have a long road ahead of us, but it can happen. And it's going to happen because we're going to track you through. We're going to give you the resources that you just go. I promise you, you will open up, you will connect, and then you will, your moods will improve. You'll feel better. You'll be future oriented. So yeah. Try to explain to them in groups. You're no different than anybody else that deserves to be waking up every morning. That's it.
And as you said, not every story ends in a happy ending, which I'm sure you've had your fair share of experiences with that, unfortunately. That must be very hard on you to, try not to take all of that weight home with you. What are things that you do for yourself to kind of decompress? I'm kind of understanding the morning workout routine now and waking up
Now
in
you
the
understand? A lot of times, it's been 13 years that I've been doing this, so I've gotten better with it. I've actually learned the knack of when I get into the car, I'll put on my Adele or my Beyonce, okay? And then I can just, it's not to be callous, but I can just turn it off because I know that I have a whole nother set of littles that are waiting for me that I need to be healthy and present to keep them out of these type of situations. But when I was in training, it hit me hard. It really, really did. I found myself coming home crying sometimes if I did lose a patient. I was very scared in treating, and I wanted to hold on to everybody because at least I know they're safe. They're not going to go out there and harm themselves. But as you work with it and you understand, the more you're involved with the family, the more you are present, it'll be okay. And so I just put my trust in these families when I'm telling them, this is the recommendation. This is what I'm seeing. I need you to carry it out for me so that I can go in my car and turn it off.
No, I mean, that's definitely a skill. And I'm sure it did take time to be able to like kind of compartmentalize those things, like, and not take all of that home and be able to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
I know I personally actually went to school for psychology because I wanted to help people, and I just felt like I wouldn't be able to learn that skill to turn it off. So that's definitely something very, very important in your line of work. Absolutely. And
this field pushes you to understand yourself. Have to. It pushes you to look at your structure, your family structure, and just, things that could have happened. I think just overall, I'm like, I had a healthy start. And whatever I could do to make these kids' lives as healthy so that they can be productive, I'm going to do it. Not everybody was born into, I'm just going to say it, like my two parents that were there, and we didn't have a lot of money, but I felt rich, right? I was showered with love, support. A lot of kids don't have that. And sometimes, when they're in the hospital, that's all they're looking for. It's sad. It's so sad. I can go on for hours about it, but yes.
No, but that is actually like very, I think, beautiful to know that you came from a loving family and didn't particularly come through that kind of struggle and still want to give back and offer that to others. I feel like a lot of times people who have hard upbringings want to give back because they've went through a hard time. So it's very, I feel like, refreshing and different to hear like a different perspective on that of like, I had this love and I know that maybe others didn't and I want to give back. So I think that's a very like great way to look at it. I've never really heard that perspective before, I guess, but it's definitely like very refreshing and honestly very beautiful to want to do that. So
thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much. This was very, very, I feel like, enlightening. I learned so much about you and about Impireum. And thank you again. This has been a great episode. I will look forward to seeing you next week for episode 3 of the Mindful Haven.